Hello friends, Christian Carter with Radius Financial Group, and today we are talking about renovation loans. And of course, a renovation loan is when you buy a crappy property and then you finance the cost of fixing that property and you turn it into a beautiful property. So we're answering two questions today. It's all about HUD consultants, right? Now, HUD consultants come with a standard FHA 203K renovation loan, right? So the two questions we're answering today: what the heck does a HUD consultant do? And then what are the typical costs and fees associated with a HUD consultant? So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so without further ado, let's get right into it. First one here: what exactly does a HUD consultant do before, during, and after the FHA 203K process, right? Well, number one, they're going to do their initial property inspection, right? Now, sometimes the borrower, the potential home buyer, is there at the property for this inspection. Sometimes they're not, right? But essentially, that HUD consultant is going to identify all the necessary repairs and/or improvements that need to be done to that property, right? The property that potential homeowner is buying. And then kind of a caveat here, they're going to ensure that the property, upon completion of all the renovations, will meet HUD's minimum standards, right? So if railings need to be put in, a kitchen needs to be replaced, the roof needs to be replaced, things like that, this HUD consultant is going to make sure that once the 203K process is complete, that home is going to meet HUD's minimum standards, right? So first up, initial property inspection. After that, and to be honest with you, these kind of happen concurrently, number 2 and 3. They can happen at different times. One can happen before the other. For our sake, we're going to do number 2 is the work write-up and the estimate, right? So essentially, the HUD consultant prepares a detailed work write-up with general cost estimates, right? So he or she is going to write up what work needs to be done to that property and a ballpark number of how much it should cost, right? And essentially, this document is going to outline the entire scope of work that needs to be done to this property, again, to meet minimum HUD standards, right? All right, so he's also going to review the contractor bids. So some part in this process, the potential homeowner, whoever's going to be buying the property, is going to have their general contractor go out to the property and essentially do a work write-up or a scope of work themselves to basically tell that potential homeowner, hey, I'm going to do the kitchen and the roof and the new heating system and blah, blah, blah. And each thing is going to cost this much. And then at the end, the total project is going to cost this much, right? So part of the HUD consultant's job is to review the contractor bid, right? The HUD consultant is going to ensure the prices are reasonable, right? So for example, if the homeowner or the contractor is redoing the kitchen and that is going to cost 25 grand, the HUD consultant wants to make sure that in that area of the country and the specific, square footage of the kitchen and the cabinets and all that, that kitchen is going to be worth about 25 grand, right? That's the normal rate for a kitchen in that area, right? So the HUD consultant is going to make sure that the homeowner is kind of not getting screwed by the contractor. And you got to think about it from our perspective as the lender. We don't want to lend money paying for a $50,000 kitchen when in reality, the going rate is only $25,000 for that kitchen. So the HUD consultant is protecting the potential homeowner while also protecting us, the lender. And then lastly here, the HUD consultant is going to ensure the work is in line with the work write-up, right? So again, that contractor is going to have a scope of work saying all the things that he or she is going to do to improve that property. And then the HUD consultant is going to compare that with the work write-up that the HUD consultant prepared and say, okay, good, the contractor is hitting all the things that I want to see. And if not, the HUD consultant is going to reach out to the contractor and say, hey, you need to add a new roof, right? You need to add a new roof because the roof is about to fail. there's a hole in the roof, there's water coming in, blah, 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 right? Next up here, the HUD consultant is going to monitor the rehab process as well as the draw requests, right? So essentially, the HUD consultant is going to conduct periodic inspections, right? And the HUD consultant is looking for two things during these inspections. He's going to make sure that the contractor is still on the specified timeline, right? And the HUD consultant is going to make sure that the contractor is doing everything up to code, and again, it meets HUD's minimum standards, right? That's essentially the two things he or she is looking for during the periodic inspections. And then essentially, the HUD consultant is going to verify the work has been completed before releasing funds to the contractor. Now, I don't want to go down, too much of a rabbit hole here, but essentially there are different draw requests throughout the process where the contractor is going to get paid. So, for example, if the contractor says, "Hey, the kitchen is all done. I would like my $25,000 for the kitchen that I just did," HUD consultant says, "Okay, perfect. Just let me go out to the property and inspect it and make sure it's good." HUD consultant goes out to the property, sees that the kitchen is, meets the minimum standards, everything's done up to code, says, "Great, here's your 25 grand, contractor," right? So that's kind of that process. And then lastly, the HUD consultant will do the final inspection, and that's essentially just how it sounds, right? HUD consultant is going to walk through the property with the scope of work and with the work write-up and make sure that all work throughout the property has been done in accordance with those two documents, right? All right, now we're moving on to the right side of the screen. Well, you're right. And this will go much quicker. And essentially what we're doing here is we're answering the question, what are the typical costs and fees associated with a HUD consultant, right? Quick caveat, before we go in here, these fees can vary greatly, right? And two big things that are going to make these fees vary is what section of the country the work is being done at, right? So where the property is located. For example, a kitchen in the Southeast is going to cost much less than, a kitchen in Los Angeles, right? So it's going to matter where the property is located, and then it's going to matter how much work is actually being done to that property, right? Is it a small renovation or is it a massive renovation? So before I get called out on some of these fees, this is just an average kind of general idea to let you know how much these fees are roughly going to cost, right? All right, so first up, the HUD consultant is going to charge for the initial inspection and the work write-up, right? For a limited or streamlined 203K, going to be anywhere from about $400 to $800. If it's the bigger, standard or full 203K, anywhere from $600 to $1,500. Next up, there's going to be draw inspection fees. So every time the contractor is going to request a draw, the HUD consultant is going to have to drive out to the property and, just like we talked about, make sure everything's up to code. Or up to snuff, as we like to say. So for every draw inspection fee, it's going to cost somewhere between $100 and $200, right? Change order fees, I did put this in here. The bulk of the fees are going to be up here, but if there are any change order fees, again, it's kind of like the draw request fees, $100 to $200. Not really going to break the bank there. And then I wanted to add these two caveats at the bottom as well. So mileage and travel expenses, 9 times out of 10, these are already worked into these prices because the HUD consultant knows he or she needs to drive out to the property and do all these things. So 9 times out of 10, the mileage and travel expenses are built into these fees. Sometimes they're not. Same thing with final inspection. Sometimes there is, a line item for a final inspection, and sometimes it's already built into the estimate. So I know that was a lot of information. These 203Ks and these renovation loans, there is a lot of information that goes along with it, right? But they're really not bad. All these questions are easy to answer. All right, that's all she wrote. I hope you enjoyed this week's video on renovation loans and more specifically HUD consultants. If you do have more questions or you have more topics for videos that you want me to cover, I would love it if you can leave it in the comments below, and I'll be sure to shoot a video on that topic. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, I would love it if you can give it a big thumbs up. And then lastly, if you do tend to enjoy most of my videos, I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel. That really helps me out. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Adios.